Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm finally going to take a look at this new locomotive that I've had here for like 2 months. And I know it's going to upset some people because I have full Pensy gear on and we're talking about a New York Central locomotive. But this is a Pensy channel for the most part, so get over it. So, we are looking at... Commodore Vanderbilt, affectionately known as the upside down bathtub. This has a kind of an interesting model history. This was announced by Broadway back in 2016 or 17, I think. It had an even longer development cycle than even what the K4 Streamlined had. So I originally had no plans of getting one of these, and just from the sheer amount of waiting for one, and it just kind of became a unicorn that I didn't think was ever going to come out. So when it did, I was just kind of wanting one out of the blue. So fortunately, I was able to find one. These are still out there. I don't think these have sold out everywhere just yet, and we'll take a look at some other things on that at the end of the video. But let's get this thing out of the box and take a look at it. So again, this has the new terrible Broadway packaging, which just makes everything look cheap, even though it's super expensive. Losing parts already. Looks like there's a additional rear truck that comes with it. I'm guessing this is probably for larger turns. Looks like we got a little warning label on there. I got the owner's manual at the bottom here. I just want to be sure that I'm not dropping out any possible broken off detail parts. Looks like some additional skirting pieces there, not sure where they go yet. All right. Feels like it weighs about the same as my K4 Streamlined. I don't see anything broken off in the box. That could be good or bad. It's good as long as nothing is broken off. It's bad if there is something broken off and I don't have it. Oh, that's interesting. Well, you can see there kind of on the drawbar, there's two positions. I'm going to go with the further away one, just so we won't have any issues clearing corners, just in case. Feels like it's got some traction tires on it. It does. Very difficult when you lift this upside down to not decouple it. I'll fix that and we'll take a look at a close-up here on it. Go over it, make sure nothing's broken. Alright, let's take a look at the front of this thing. I think I see now where these things here are supposed to go. Looks like they should be going right about there. And I opted for the version that had the disc drivers on it, so I think that looks cooler. I like the rivets. That's neat. That's a piece of dust there, fuzzy. Nice rivets on the tender. Kind of gives it that real old-time feel. I don't know if there's any kind of deck plating here. See if maybe we can get that out. Oh, yep, there is. Not very long, but I am running in the long drawbar position. I'm curious if that kind of hits on itself there in corners. Does this have an opening tender? No, that's cast. I know on some of the Dreyfuss Hudsons, those are movable. I really like the paint on this. I don't know how well it comes out in camera, but it's kind of like a semi-metallic pewter color. Really looks good. Let's take a look at the other side. Alright, so what was just a couple seconds for you was about 20 minutes for me. Before I was getting ready to flip it on here, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and put these two front pieces on here. And it's kind of an interesting situation with those, because I felt like one side went on really good. You know, and it looks good. The other side, not so much. And it's like you really see that little seam right there. And even from the front, well, I guess directly from the front end, it's not that bad. But it doesn't seem to blend in as much over here. And actually I had to do a little bit of work with the pocket knife on the little posts in this piece here were kind of burred. So I worked that out a little bit, and obviously with that in there, there is a limited amount of movement in that front truck. We'll see what radius it goes down to, but fortunately this one kind of comes apart like your old BLI engines, just has the tender plug there. So easy to get this disconnected. Reconnecting is sometimes a little more of a pain. But gives you a chance to take a look underneath them while these are apart. One thing I do want to show you here with the engine itself, so you can see as we're taking a look there is quite a bit of room in the boiler shell. So it's pretty hollow in there. So you probably could stuff some extra weight into this if you really needed to. One other thing I want to show you here, because you can't really see it necessarily from the side, is the texture on the side there. So you can really see like kind of the stamped metal there. Kind of the first time I saw that done on a steam engine. For those that are wondering about weights, just the locomotive itself here, about 450 grams, which is a little bit less than a pound. 15.9 ounces. $16 ounces in a pound. You get the point. With the tender on there, jumps up to 26.2 ounces. About 745 grams. And this is a die-cast shell on both of these. Actually, there isn't really much plastic at all on either of them. some of the detail parts, things like the horns and stuff up here at the top. And you got some hosing here at the back. Normally I would start to go over the sounds and all that, but I have that muted here and I have the smoke turned off. So I think kind of a worthy test for this would be to see what the minimal radius is on it with the skirting installed here. And can't really notice it necessarily on camera, but I am on the closer drawbar setting, so it's kind of set up to be as scale as possible and most realistic. So we're going to see what it can do here. And just to tell you a little bit about my loops, I got 32 here on the outside, which I'm pretty sure it would clear. Most people don't have that, so we're not even going to take a look at that. But I got 28, 26, and then 24. So we'll kind of go one by one here, and if it clears this, I might just jump straight to the 24 to see if it clears that. You know, I don't know what Broadway quotes or doesn't quote with this. I don't really care. I prefer to see things with my own eyes. So we'll go ahead and fire it up here. Oop. Gotta turn on my throttle. Come on. Kind of noisy. Put our deck plate down there. Oop, and it popped off on the front truck there. So it doesn't look like it can clear 28. I expected it might be able to do that, but let's jump to the outside track here and see if it can do that. If it can't do that, then I'm gonna have to definitely take that part off there, which would be unfortunate because I think it does look a lot better with that being on there. But we'll go ahead and see here real quick. This will also be a good chance to observe the keep alive. So we'll go ahead and fire back up the sound. Yeah, lasts for about 5 seconds there. That's pretty good. Oh, drawbar came undone there. All right. All right. So 32 radius. Let's see what we got. Just gonna mute that for a second there. So far, so good. Give it a little more speed. Seems to be working on that. We'll turn the sound back on for now. See what kind of whistle it got. I don't know if that's accurate or not. Oh, looks like we got a problem. And that problem's right here. So, went off the track there. Well, that is rather frustrating. Alright, so I did a little more investigating on this front truck issue here, and it seems like that there's a dip in my track kind of towards the back half of the layout, and it's ever so slightly, but it does make the front truck derail here. So I think if you had perfect track, you might be able to get away with 32 radius. However, it is a tight fit, and if you have any kind of elevation changes, I think it would probably cause the same type of problem. So I think solidly 33 or 34 inch radius is probably what you need in order to operate and still maintain that additional front skirting there. So it's unfortunate because I think the locomotive does look a lot better with that being on there, and I wish they could have engineered a solution that allowed for it to be there. Or maybe altered it in some way so that it could kind of still be there but have some operation in the front. So unfortunately, we're going to have to remove those out of there and put them back in the plastic bag in order to run this. If you're going to put this on a display shelf, you know, by all means, go ahead and add those on there. It's not going to affect you, but if you want to run this pretty much on anything except for a humongous layout, you're going to have to ditch them. So we're going to head and do that now. Alright, so we're going to actually do some running with it here now, and I've gone ahead and taken off the additional skirting here at the front, and I also have it in the long drawbar position, which means it should negotiate curves to the best of its ability. I have it on my steepest one here, which is the 24 inch radius, which is my innermost loop. So we'll go ahead and see how it handles it. And also give us a chance to do some top speed runs while we're at it. Let's throw in some smoke too. No, that's not good. So it doesn't seem particularly fast. I don't know if it's just this loop. Now, smoke's starting to go now. Just a little trick there to get it going. We're going to try a different loop. Maybe we'll see a little bit better running characteristics and speed out of this loop. I don't typically run that inner loop too much, or at least not recently, so the track work might not be fantastic on that. It's been probably at least 6 months since I cleaned it too, so that factors into it, I'm sure. Off to the races. '73. '72. Let's see what we get on the low end of things. Speed step 1. It is smooth. Kind of fast though. Looks closer to about 2 miles an hour. We'll see what it gets. Yep, 2.2. So I did coax a bit more speed out of our favorite bathtub here, and how I did that was with CV3. I cranked it up, no, actually, I'm sorry, not CV3, CV5, which controls the top speed of the engine. I cranked that up to the maximum of 255, and it was able to get up to about 84 scale miles an hour, which pretty good. I would prefer probably a little bit closer to 100, but I don't think it has that in it. So obviously when you load up some passenger cars to this, it will drop down a bit. So let's see what that does, because I am kind of curious on what this can pull, because it doesn't seem to have a very impressive weight to it. So, but it does also have the rubber traction tires on, so you know, sometimes we're surprised by those, sometimes they don't help. So let's see what it actually does real world here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any New York Central passenger cars, much less the ones that would be correct for this, because it's kind of not really my road. I don't mess around too much with the New York Central, but they do have some cool stuff, this being one of them, and I do want to look into getting some period correct passenger cars for it, which from what I've saw looks like it would be the heavyweights, because this looks like it ran a couple years before they went to the streamliners. And I had planned on getting some streamliners to run with the Dreyfuss Hudson someday when I get one of those. So it would be nice to have something different to run with these. So in time I'll pick those up. But we'll just throw some other cars on here just to see what it can kind of handle as far as a passenger load. Alright, so I threw some passenger cars on here. I've got 7 Bachmann heavyweights hooked up to it, which would be pretty representative of what I may end up running with this train, just because these Bachmanns are Bachmann Spectrum from the 90s. They're lit passenger cars. They're very easy to work on, pretty good detail to them, and they're not expensive, so I mean they're pretty attainable. Yes, I mean, there's obviously some Walthers cars out there which are quite nicer and are usually a bit more expensive, and I'll probably get a couple of those to mix in with it. So we'll go ahead and see if it can pull this 7-car train, which is not the easiest. I've had other locomotives struggle with this. So we'll go speed step 1. And generally pulling at low speed is always what's hardest. We're not on the uphill section yet. We're just seeing if it's going to pull it at least from a stop. Even with Pensy cars, it does look good. So as you can see, it's a reasonably long train, even with just 7 cars. So I'm running at about half throttle here, 63 out of 126. Pretty low speed. Headlight looks great on that. I really like those disc drivers too. You know, and it actually doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to be without the additional skirting. So we're going to crank up the throttle a little more here. Seems to be managing the passenger cars pretty well. So now we're building up a little bit of speed here. It does look good. I will give it that. We're now at full speed. "72 miles an hour. Alright, so let's wrap it up here and just go over a couple things and some things that I want to show you here. So, first off, you know, I'm glad that this actually ended up happening, just because I actually do want to show you something here on the computer. I did find it here, still out there in an archive web page. 2016 was when this locomotive was first announced. 2016. And it was originally slated to be a Paragon 3 model. Look at this. $375? Yeah, well, that's not what it ended up being. So, what it ended up being now, you know, I'm just using Train World as an example. I'm not saying to buy from Train World, but $480. That's quite a bit more. Granted, you know, a lot changes in 7 years. Now, one other cool thing is that Train World actually does have an exclusive version of these, which is in a fantasy scheme. It's called the Pacemaker. Something to do with New York Central. I'm not a New York Central guy, but if you want that scheme, you got to get it through them. And I guess that's kind of cool. Now, if you really want this locomotive at a good deal, this will probably not even be a factor for most people within the next couple months. But at the time of making this video, you can go to Broadway Limited's website under their refurb section right here. They're selling these for $360, and they got both versions. They have the regular drivers and the disc drivers. That's really the way to go. If you want to get one of these, that's the way to do it. So in the end, I feel kind of aggravated that, you know, these are out there being sold for $360 when I paid close to $500 for mine. So, you know, if you didn't get one yet and you want one, you know, there you go. Obviously, those will not be around for very long, but take advantage of it while it's there. So this is the first offering of these in a mass-produced model and HO scale ever. These were only previously available as a brass model. I believe it was Precision Scale did these, and they were usually close to $2,000. Very well done. You know, it's a beautiful model, but not really something that's going to have sound pre-installed in it. Not going to be a particularly great runner. would probably be even more finicky than this one, running sharper curves, just because, you know, those are meant to be exactly to scale. They don't really care if you're trying to run it around a 24-inch curve. They build it to look like it should look like, not really to operate. So if you want something you know, have intentions of running, you know, this is kind of your only option. And just like with many other models that come to market now, it's whoever can produce the model first is going to be the one that pretty much has the monopoly on it forever. Because another company isn't just going to pop up and do this engine. And for the people that say, oh, well, scale trains will do it someday. Maybe 20 years from now. You know, it's you know, with this hobby kind of declining in terms of the amount of money that's going into it from consumers, I don't see another company popping up that's going to be the size of Broadway Limited. So this is going to be really the only game in town for this engine. And there is a lot that it does well. Even without the skirting on here, I think it's grown on me. It doesn't look as bad as I thought it would look. And it is actually kind of cool to actually see some of the front pilot there. So it's an awesome looking engine. Just for testing purposes, I did try throwing on a couple more cars in addition to the 7 passenger cars that I had on it. And the moment that I put one more on, it actually couldn't pull it. So, you know, 7 Bachmann heavyweights is about the limit of what this can do. However, I do think that there is significant potential in the locomotive shell there to add some additional weight, and you can probably get a little more pulling power out of it. When I eventually get around to getting some cars for this, I'll probably experiment with that a little bit, and of course we'll do a video on that and see how it turns out. That's quite a bit down the road, as I have a lot of other projects, a lot of other big projects, and I do mean big by the amount of money and also the amount of the size, physical size. I can tell you that something big is on the way. I just scored it off of eBay today. There'll be a little more hint on that in the near future. But, you know, just wrapping it up here. Pretty good model, you know, and it's unique looking for sure. Even as something that you may just get as something to put in a display case, it's a lot easier to get one of these than try to get a hold of a precision scale one. So I'm happy to have it in my collection. Eventually I do want to get a matching set of passenger cars that this can run with. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it could have been done better. I would have liked to have seen a little bit better weight, a little bit better engineering with the front pilot there, but I understand that there's limitations there. Also, when I was running it here on some of my outer tracks, I didn't have any issues whatsoever with it cutting out. So I think earlier that was just my poor dirty track causing those problems. Just because I haven't used some of these loops for close to a year, and I haven't cleaned them either. So, you know, a capacitor only gets you so far with poor track. So, I believe that's it for this one. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting, but I don't want it to drag on too long. So I hope that gives you a little more idea of how these run out of the box, you know, what some of their limitations are and how they look. So that's it for this one. There will be more, for sure. I have plans for at least 2 more videos here shortly. The next one I want to talk about some of the recent developments with Broadway, just because there's been a lot that's come out since we last talked about that. And of course the big engine. But we'll talk about that later. All right, so have a good one, guys.